same spot. So the plan now is to still focus on microfinance. We're focusing on microfinance for our first 2 years. We want to prove out the microfinance model that it works and that we can grow a contributor base around China microfinance. And then post that, we want to expand every 2 years to a new industry. So it's allowing our users to find something more interesting every 2 years. So then in 10 years, we'll be the next age of society. And it'll be a completely transparent person-to-person lending platform for young people who are interested in connecting with China. My final thoughts for you guys are 3 quotes that I just love and I live by. One is be the change you wish to see in the world. I got that cup when I was like 6 or 7 and I absolutely believe in it. Only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. And the problems that exist in the world today cannot be solved by the level of thinking that created them. That's all I got.
So, from what I understand, just the problems in China for microfinance involve a lot of problems with infrastructure, like trust within the local, communities with their government, trust, with the community to bank, problems with like loan sharks, like moving the microfinance initiatives out. How are you guys are you guys at all like improving this infrastructure with the MFIs, or are you just kind of loaning them money and looking for the right ones that already are in the right regions?
Well, by putting a spotlight on China microfinance and making the international microfinance community aware of it, you're allowing that social pressure to occur. So we can't go in and change the Chinese government as one organization in China. They're not going to listen to us. But if we raise awareness in the U.S. about what's going on in China about microfinance, we're hoping that infrastructure will start to change. And you're already starting to see that change in awareness in the Chinese government. There's been regulations that have been closer and closer in the past couple of years, further liberalizing the sector, allowing for foreign non-profit organizations to come in and get a legal status, which is very, very slow. So by the more we can act as a catalyst for that, by putting more information online and allowing more information and freedom of information about the sector, that will start to lose that. But we go and meet with the local government, and we have to get to know all microfinance institutions are very entrenched in the local government where they're involved. They're such small communities.
Well, thank you, Courtney, for the great presentation, firstly. And my question is actually about the demographics for the lenders. Mm-hmm. What are kind of like typical users for Wokai?
That's an interesting question. So, overall international microfinance standards is usually 80% women. In China, it's about 60% women. So you have a little bit less women. I think what they really capitalized on China is kind of this social guanxi, where you have in rural areas you have generations upon generations of people that have existed there, and the idea of being ostracized from your community for not repaying a loan, they're really tapping into that. So they're liberalizing in terms of giving to both men and women.
What about in terms of lenders?
Lenders.
Yeah.
So contributors.
Yeah,
Contributors. It's actually split. So we've had. I divide it into Chinese, non-Chinese. Non-Chinese being but everything else. But it's really been split. We haven't had. It's not completely Chinese. If you actually go on the site www.pilot.wokai.org, you can see people's photos, and it's really a mixed community. It's but most of them are young.
Also, in terms of incentives for the lenders or the contributors, other than kind of that good feeling of donating, to the poor people in China,
yeah.
What are some of the incentives, kind of tangible incentives for the lenders?
I think in America today, you see that everyone naturally has some part of them that they usually give to someone less fortunate than themselves, whether it be someone on the street or someone in your classes, and you're helping them out with something. You always have this tendency to want to give, just because we're in such a level of wealth here. So really, we're just capitalizing on that by creating. Maybe if you want to focus that back to China, we're allowing you a platform to do that, and just allowing the social networking and kind of the intrigue of what this can potentially become. Yes.
I'm sure you guys know all about Kiva and what they're doing and stuff. I'm wondering what you guys really like about them, or what you guys don't like about them, and what you guys are trying to do to improve on that model.
Yes, so I know Matt very well actually. He was part of the stimulus for starting Wokai. I contacted him way back wanting to start a China chapter of Kiva, and then we found out about all the regulatory issues and found out it wasn't going to work. And kind of from their standpoint, they have poverty around the world you know, to solve. Why just focus on China when it's going to be such a headache? I know they're still trying to get involved in China, and you know, we've definitely shared information with them as to how we're operating. But I mean, in terms of them tweaking their model, it's not really something they want to do. What I like about Kiva and what I've learned a lot from Matt is that what drives the site is not microfinance, it's content. And he made it very clear to me that I was coming at it from the wrong angle of microfinance and wanting to grow microfinance, and he said, no, you know, you want to grow a connection between people through a pipeline and through a platform. And so what you really need to care about is content, which is what started the greater idea of where Wokai could go. And the reason for that is that if you think of Kiva, Kiva is focusing on one cause, microfinance, but diversifying across countries. And Wokai, the problem with it before was that it was focused on one country, one cause. And that's not good for content generation in terms of being a technology nonprofit. So but if you focus on one country and diversify across industries, it once again allows there to be colorful content online.
I'm kind of interested in your partnership with the local managers, local names. But my question was, what was the original source of funding for these guys? And if you don't mind, can you please just share a little bit terms and conditions that you guys have with them?
Yes. So most of these organizations have gotten capital through, sometimes they've gotten it through government sources, sometimes they've gotten it through multilateral institutions, sometimes they've gotten it through NGOs. But typically it's one grant that they've gotten for 2 or 3 years, and that dwindles over time. The reason that dwindles over time is you're thinking, well, if it's microfinance, they should just be able to loan out the money and then get the money back. But from the example I gave before, where you have one loan manager traveling a long distance to service 6 borrowers as opposed to 100 borrowers, it starts to slowly drain your operational costs. So over time, it drains down to a small amount, and they eventually cease to exist, which is why there's 300 organizations that started, and now there's only 100. And really only 20, more like 10 that we'd actually want to partner with that have upstanding operations. So the way we contract with them is that the cost of capital for them in working with us is the cost of renting an apartment for a year in our local village. And the reason for that is that we have Wokai field partners, or Wokai fellows, that go and live at these financial institutions for periods of 3 months. So we offer a Wokai Fellows program, which is very intriguing to most people who live in Beijing and Shanghai that are visiting for the year, because the idea of going and living in a rural area for a whole year is not that exciting. And especially if you go and visit for a month, you kind of walk through a rural area and you don't really get involved. So the opportunity to go and live in a rural area for 3 months and be involved in a microfinance institution is very enticing. So we require that the microfinance institution rent an apartment for the year. And that ends up being about a 2%. If you take the cost of that apartment for the year and spread it over the amount of money we're giving them, it ends up being about a 1 or 2% interest rate, I guess, on the loan. So that's kind of the terms of our agreement with them. And we set up the amount of money we're going to bring them based on our financial projections for year 1, which is $500,000, and the size of their organization. So a smaller organization, we feel we grow at a slower rate, as opposed to a bigger organization, we grow at a faster rate. And those are going to adjust too, depending on how well an organization is able to scale. That's what I'm most worried about with our field partners, and why I think we need a good 2-year learning curve, especially with microfinance. You don't want to grow them too quickly. If you grow them too quickly, you're not going to get, so for every 60 or 70 borrowers they give, they need to get another loan manager. And they need to train that loan manager how to proceed with the microfinance operations. And if you grow too quickly and you're getting any type of loan manager, the system's not going to work. It takes a long time to choose a reliable and a thoughtful loan manager in order to train borrowers and really maintain sanctity of operations.
Let's take one last question.
So you mentioned that Wokai is trying to go on to different sectors like education and initiative
In
the future. But the problem with education and initiative is that it's not necessarily going to generate income. I mean, they're going to generate value in terms of other things like sustainability, but it's not going to necessarily return the loan that it actually originally took.
Right.
So are you thinking of like changing this microfinance from infrastructure into more like a donor outreach platform? And how will you resolve like, the two issues? Like, are you still going to keep the microfinance platform? How will you distinguish it from the rest of the donor outreach platform?
So we thought about that a little bit, and what we really want to become is